Welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast, where we focus on the key social issues of our time. One of those issues, of course, is our environment and what's needed to protect it. Consider that over 80% of the U.S. population lives in cities and urbanized areas, and cities are getting hotter, more polluted, and more inequitable, with climate change accelerating these trends. Extreme heat disproportionately affects urban residents, particularly in low-income communities. But what if the solution isn't rebuilding cities from scratch, but instead retrofitting them with systems that work with nature, systems that reuse significant amounts of urban waste instead of literally throwing everything away? Is that possible? Our guest today, Joshua Harrison, says it is. Joshua is the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Leaf Island, an award-winning green infrastructure company based in New York. And he's director of the Center for the Study of the Force Majeure at UC Santa Cruz. His current focus is transforming cities into functioning ecosystems using modular, scalable technologies, starting with rooftops, walls, streets, and coastlines. Joshua, thanks so much for joining us on the Lean to the Left podcast.
Bob, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, your approach begins with green roofs. How do they work, and what's the benefit of all of that?
Our approach begins with the fact that water is the way the planet cools itself. It's the chief engine, and water is the chief regulatory process everywhere on the landscape and on the ocean. And it's more important than carbon, actually. It has much more of an effect than carbon does. And the chief mechanism by which water cools the planet on land is through what they call the evapotranspiration of, that's part of photosynthesis. In other words, plants take in carbon dioxide and they emit oxygen and water vapor. And when water vapor is released, it cools the air around it. It takes energy to turn it into vapor, and that energy is sucked in from the outside. It's the same principle that your air conditioner uses, only in a closed loop.
Okay.
And that's how the planet has spent, hundreds of millions of years figuring this out. It's one of the oldest functioning technologies around. It's free. It's available. It's been adapted for every single possible climatic condition. So why aren't we paying more attention to it? So that's where we start. Water is the key to solving a tremendous amount of our environmental issues, how we use it, how we manage it. And one of the ways that works is with plants.
Okay. So it's with plants. Now, I was fascinated to read about your work with respect to green roofs. What is that? How does that work?
Well, a green roof is essentially taking any area, we use roofs because they're the big flat area on the top of a building, and bringing plants back to it. Now, you can think of it a lot of different ways, but if you think about an island like Manhattan, built up, it's a big rock.
Right.
And imagine another big rock. Let's talk about the most recent big rock that happened on the planet. It's the big island of Hawaii. It's the most recent large structure. A million years ago, it was a big, hot, steaming rock. Think of Hawaii today. Does it look like a big, hot, steaming rock?
No, it's beautiful.
All right. And what's underneath all that beauty? That same big, hot, steaming rock, only it's not so hot anymore.
Perfect.
So imagine that you can take, if you treat buildings as if they were bare pieces of rock waiting to adapt, and you work obviously not at the speed of geological time, but you think about what you can do in human time.
Okay.
You can bring those plants back into a large variety of the human places that we build. We spent a lot of time stripping away plants from what we do, but we can also bring them back. Now, our company is called Leaf Island, and Leaf Island is based on what we call the Leaf Island effect.
Okay.
And that is if you take the same amount of leafy green material in enough of a complexity, and you put it on the rooftops, the sidewalls, the hardscapes, the streets, of a place like Manhattan, you can generate the same temperatures that Henry Hudson would have found when he came up sailing up the river, because you're maintaining that same plant density. And because Manhattan is a vertical city, you have a huge amount of real estate that you can do. So you only need to cover somewhere between 30 and 40% of that real estate in order to get the full effect.
Okay.
So
So are we talking about like building
no,
putting lawns up there or
well, not
gardens or what?
putting meadows more than lawns. Lawns
Meadows.
don't really give you the bang for the buck.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to have to go up there
And yeah, no, lawns.
and
Yeah,
cut the grass on top of the roof.
no. You're looking at things that require limited maintenance. You know,
Okay.
everything requires some maintenance. And of course, once you've got a garden, you basically can choose what you put up there. I mean, some
Sure.
people want to put gardens up there. We have a factory in Red Hook where they grow tomatoes in the summer and they cook barbecues up there. You could, if it's a residential building, you can make a beautiful garden you can walk through. If it's just a commercial or industrial space, then
Okay.
it can be something you can basically not pay much attention to.
So what am I trying to ask you? So you put these gardens up there and you mentioned sidewalls. How do you do it with sidewalls?
Well, it's like you find different solutions for trellises.
Uh,
I mean, if you've seen ivy on a building, you of course
oh,
don't.
okay, sure, yeah.
You don't necessarily want to put roots on most buildings. So you basically are starting and you're seeing lots of technologies to do this, where you separate some space with your building. Either you hang it down from the top or you come up from the bottom. And you can even do things. And let me add a couple of things to this. First,
Okay.
there's a difference between building new. When you're building new, you can build these things into the cities. And the best examples of that, and Singapore is probably the best single example of what they've done.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, China is putting out cities that are very green, that house 3, 4, 5, 10 million people. They're doing it at the rates of every couple of years. They're throwing it. So they're doing things that are just staggeringly good and staggeringly bad. They're also the biggest producer of coal and the biggest solar producer and the biggest nuclear energy. So they're doing an all of the above policy. But if you just look at the better things they're doing amazing things. But those are buildings, and the way they put plants on the walls is they create sort of surface structures that plants can adhere to, call them mini terraces. Some of them are big, some of them are small, and at every 10 or 15 or 30 feet in the building, there's something you can put plants on. When you have a modern skyscraper that was built without that consideration, you have you have to find different technical fixes that are.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about buildings that are already there that weren't constructed with anything like that in mind. How does that have to be changed in order to handle let's say a meadow or a garden or whatever it is?
Since that's 80% of the built environment, we have to have some answers to that.
Sure.
And you want to have answers to how you can bring green infrastructure into an existing city, because you don't want to rebuild it. An existing building is much less carbon intensive than a new building because it's already there.
Right.
You've already spent all the carbon of that building.
Right.
So it's much better to figure out how to maintain that building from a carbon sense. It's much better from maintaining the coherence of the place you're living in, the stability of your place. You don't want to be throwing everything down and building everything up.
Right.
So what are the solutions? One of the reasons we founded the company is based on the fact that one of my co-founders, a mad genius named Paul Pankowitz, who's done a tremendous amount of ecological innovation over his lifetime, realized that he wanted to find something to confront the biggest problem with putting dirt everywhere. Dirt's heavy and water's heavy. Plants can be heavy depending on what you're putting up. And rooftops in general, structurally, are the least supported part of a building because you don't have to walk up.
Right.
So generally speaking, roofs, unless they're purpose built, aren't built to handle great weight. So how can you come up with something that actually can do that? And he came up with a really insightful thought. What if you take one of the biggest waste products we have, styrofoam? It's 80% of America's landfills by volume. Why? Because it's lightweight, it's big, it's lasts indefinitely, and it's all the things that make it a waste problem
Right.
turn out to be helpful if you turn it into an artificial soil. Why? Because it's lightweight. It allows you to create a soil structure with the right organic ingredients that has the ability to have the air particles within it that allow the food nutrients to pass more productively, to allow all those mycelium layers, the fungal layers to go communicate. So you end up with a very bioproductive soil. Styrofoam itself doesn't compress very well. So one of the big issues with soil is over time as it compacts, and that's why farmers until recently spent a lot of time tilling because the soil compacted.
Sure.
So styrofoam doesn't do that. It floats, so that has other uses that we can use when you get away from roofs and move down. And if it's covered, it's basically stable and it lasts as long as you maintain the roof, so you can keep it indefinitely. And
So are you saying that you can turn styrofoam into dirt?
You can turn styrofoam into an artificial soil that works and produces, and it's more it's not as bioproductive as hydroponics. It's just using water and nutrients.
Who would have ever thunk that?
But it's more, that's right. Well, and the other virtue of that is you're taking something, a city basically right now takes a whole bunch of stuff in, and when it's done with it, throws it away. Well, nothing can do that over an indefinite period of time because, what are you going to do with all the stuff you're throwing away? And in a natural system, in nature, there is no throwaway. Every output is an input. And until we treat our cities so that their urban waste has other functions that we can use that are helpful to the thriving of the city, we're going to have the same kind of problems. So styrofoam, they're not making as much of it, but there's so much out there that it's not going away for a long time. If we can find ways to take styrofoam out of the waste stream and turn it into something that's productive and helpful and actually can feed people, you can use the soil because it doesn't leach into food. It's stable. It's inert. All the things that make it problematic as a waste product turn out to be helpful when you turn it into an artificial soil.
Okay. So does your company work with builders in order to create the type of roof gardens and such that you're talking about?
We tend to work with existing buildings. So we work with roofers and landscape architects.
Okay.
We would certainly be happy to be talking and exploring, obviously, new construction because new construction makes this all easier because you can purpose build.
Right.
But as I said, 80% of the built environment is already here. Right. So we have to deal with that. I mean, New York City and most cities that have been around for a while, the China example accepted because those are brand new. Most of the structures in those buildings exist, and and most of the people live near the structures that exist. And if you want to address like the urban heat island effect, heat, for example, is the single largest cause and all the associated elements of unpredicted death right now in the United States and in much of the world. So the effects of too much heat are devastating. It's one of the biggest public health issues that the country's facing. And every city knows it. Every city planner knows it. And one of the best things you can do as we started this conversation is to bring nature's powerful cooling tool. Let me give you another just basic example. Imagine you're in the Amazon on the equator. It's a hot midsummer day. You're sitting by the base of the Amazon. How hot do you think it is?
I don't know, 95 degrees.
Not too bad. It's actually a little cooler. It's about 85 to 90 degrees, pretty stable. Okay, while you're looking up, there's trees all around. Now, say you just happen to go over to Africa, same latitude, and maybe even a little bit further north because you'll be in the same tropical zone, and you're in the Sahel. No trees. How hot do you think it is? Same day, roughly the same latitude.
Oh, probably 20 degrees hotter.
Easy. 20, 25, 30, maybe even 40 degrees. Could be 120, could be 130. pushing 140 in some places.
Okay.
That's the power of trees and the complex power of trees. So we want to port that same power. It's not cool in the Amazon, but it's way cooler than it would be if the trees weren't there. And that's the power. And it's not just trees, it's everything that works with photosynthesis.
How is your effort being received by building owners in New York City, for example?
Well, it's an interesting problem because, the building and housing industry is one of the more conservative industries around. We're still building, not so much in New York as you're building skyscrapers, but we're still building most housing in the United States with what you call balloon and stick housing, which hasn't changed much since the late 1920s. And so there's a lot of resistance just conceptually. There's the kind of resistance that the kind of basic questions you ask. How could this possibly work? Why is this? That said, New York City is one of the more forward climate cities in the country, which is not necessarily what you'd expect. And they understand that green roofs do a lot of things that they want to do. The other things that green roofs do and help tremendously with is they store water. So most big cities, in fact, most places of any size in this country have sewage systems that are based on managing the water, and they basically count sinks and toilets, and then they throw in a small margin. Well, when rainfall comes down, most of these places have what they call combined sewer outlets, that the rainfall that comes off stormwater drains into the same drainage system that the sewage system uses. In New York, that means if more than roughly 0.7 of an inch an hour fall on the city, which is a lot of rain, but not an amazing amount of rain,
Sure.
it saturates the system. And anything beyond that means that sewage starts flowing into the rivers. And that's true not just in New York, that's true in almost every major city in the country.
Sure.
So what does greenery do? What do green roofs do? Remember I mentioned styrofoam floats.
Right.
You can actually create these holding tanks you can turn this roof into a holding tank so it can actually absorb a certain amount more water than falls. And you could also do even more on the ground. And those can actually store the water so they can either evaporate out or you can do other things with it. And eventually, every new building in New York and in many parts of the country that have this problem are going to have to manage their rainwater.
Okay.
And they're going to have to keep the rainwater on premises. So it can support water. It can also cool temperature. And then the third main public health reason, and then we'll get to the other reasons that people use it, that green roofs are vital, is that plants have many beneficial functions, one of which is dust sticks to plants. And where that comes in handy is tiny particles, what they call the sub 2.5 micron dust particles, are the main health irritant in air pollution. That's what causes most of the asthma. It what causes all kinds of lung problems. And that sticks to plants. And then when it rains, it washes off and goes into the soil and becomes inert. So plants have those functions. And that cooling function translates into real dollars for the building owner. In the work in some of the buildings we have, you're talking 25 to 30% of both heating and air conditioning. So you're saving money in the summer because it's cooler, and because styrofoam is air and air is the great insulator, you're putting actually an insulating cover on your roof, which means you're controlling your roof. You're being able to keep your heat in your building longer. It's not radiating out. So you actually save on both heating and cooling in buildings that have well-designed green roofs as well. And in our case, the numbers are 25 to 30% in each direction.
Okay. Now, do you have examples of how this type of building innovation's been used and its benefits?
Sure. We have one of our models has been in Red Hook factory that I mentioned. It's been around since 2012.
Okay.
It's been studied by any number of environmental institutions to measure it. The Parks Department of New York has a wonderful facility that I unfortunately think they've stopped maintaining at their 5-borough transit hub on Randall's Island, where they put out about 100 different kinds of green roofs, and Cornell and Columbia had been testing them for, I don't know, 10 or 15 years as well, talking about energy savings and water retention. Our soil material consistently is at the top of the pack there, but there's lots of options there too. So this stuff has been studied a lot, and it's been in use all over. We in the United States pride ourselves on our singularity. And one of the current singularities is we're not paying attention to what other places are doing. France, for example, now every new building has to have a green roof. They're retrofitting every single parking structure to have solar and green plants on top of it. Most European countries are doing similar things. China, as I mentioned, Singapore has already converted itself into the greenest city in the world. So many places, and Colombia, the country of Colombia, is doing remarkable work. Mexico City has a remarkable project called the Via Verde, the green highway, green roadways, where they've created these remarkably effective planting structures across their elevated highways that not only capture water, they turn the underpasses of highways into park-like settings, saving water, conserving water, because Mexico is the same as a drought, water conservation and management crisis, and they have an air pollution problem. And so this is something that fits both of those quite well. So there are many, many examples all over the world, and we need to get on the 8 ball and start to catch up.
Okay. Well, let's just say that I own a building like this, I don't know, in some city somewhere. What's in it for me?
Okay, well, depending on the city. In New York City, what's in it for you is the city thinks green roofs are important enough that they have a subsidy plan that will actually pay for virtually the entire cost of installation.
Oh, wow.
Zero cost installation. It's got complications. It's a payback period. It takes about a year and a half to go through the entire process. Okay. You have to upfront the engineering. You have to get your engineering approved before they show that your roof can handle it.
Sure.
And then you have to agree to maintain it for another 20 years. So the exchanges, so not every city has that, of course. But in cities that are subsidizing solar, some of them are subsidizing green roofs as well, but not to the extent that New York City is. The other main virtue as a building, as I mentioned, for you, in addition to the sort of the community benefits and the feel-good benefits, are first in the heating and air conditioning costs, which mean if you're saving conservatively 20% in and back, you could probably look at a 7 to 10 to 12-year payback period. So if you're in a building for the long haul, those are not terrible paybacks for things that the roof itself can last 30 years, sometimes even longer. One of the other sort of ancillary benefits of putting something that insulates and reduces heat is the biggest structural problem for roofs is the expansion and contraction due to heat change, temperature differential, and also water leakage. So with a green roof, you're protecting it from a water leakage because you've got a waterproof membrane that both roots out of the roof and water away from the roof. And you're reducing the expansion and contraction of joints because there's much reduced heat stress. So those are modest ancillary benefits that help extend roof life.
Okay, so how can urban building owners explore these opportunities?
Well, they can certainly reach out to us at leafisland.org, and we'll be happy to communicate with them and explore whatever might be beneficial to them.
Okay, all right. We're living in a time when the current administration isn't exactly environmentally friendly, at least from my point of view.
From anybody's point of view.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about what you think of Trump's approach to renewable energy and the environment.
Oh, well, I don't think there's any mystery. He's hostile in the kind of ways that a third-year-old throwing a temper tantrum is hostile to somebody else taking his toys. He's dismantling wind energy because he had a tantrum about his golf course in Scotland 8 or 10 years ago. He's deeply opposed. So basically, it's not him. Let's be clear. He probably, other than wind, which he has a personal stake in, he's just hired people for their ability to dismantle the system that existed before. So he's universally doing his best. That said, no matter how much he doesn't like, for example, solar power, that ship has sailed. Globally, the solar power industry is going on without us. When I was a kid, I was during the Jimmy Carter era. The U.S. was the global leader in solar energy and alternative energy of all kinds. Then we had Reagan got elected, and the first symbolic act that President Reagan did was he took the solar water heaters that Jimmy Carter had put on the White House, and he took them down, and then his environmental policy followed suit.
Right.
And then slowly we've been rebuilding our energy, and under the Biden administration, which was, in terms of climate, by far the most important and successful climate-oriented government we've had in this country. Jimmy Carter would be the second, and everybody else lagged way, way behind, rhetoric aside. And under Biden, America had made some enormous advances, some of which are pretty hard to break. And we know that battery technology is really going to be important. We know that electrification is going to happen whether we like it or not. And it's, that those ships have sailed. And, administrations come and go, and there will be a time when this is over and we will have to play catch up.
Well, that's the most hopeful thing that I've heard in a while. The administrations come and go, and there will come a time when we'll have to play catch up.
Yeah, the bottom line is and I'm just going to say this clearly.
Sure.
The Nazis claimed they had 1,000-year Reich. It lasted 13 years. And they were the most powerful engine of vicious destruction and social devastation that we've seen any of our lifetimes or our parents' lifetimes. And they lasted 13 years. And what happened after that? We completely restructured the world order. We actually did a whole bunch of things that they're falling apart again. Okay. But we did a whole bunch of stuff that actually worked. I don't need to always take and in geological time, let's just go out. We're living in what they call the sixth extinction. That meant 5 extinctions that we know of happened prior to the current environmental extinction. The most recent one being when the dinosaurs disappeared. So what happened when the dinosaurs disappeared? What survived were these small, warm-blooded, furry little things called mammals, which eventually became us. So we are living proof that things will survive, whether the real question is, how does human civilization make it? And I think that there's enough things going on that human civilization wants to make it, that I'm a little bit of an optimist.
Tell me about the Center for the Study of Force Majeure that you're involved with.
Sure. We have a funny, complicated name, but we use force majeure, which is a French term that most contracts use. It means acts of God. And an insurance company, that's the term or the excuse an insurance company uses when you have storm hits and wind hits and they come back and say, we can't pay you because we're willing to pay for water damage, but the wind damage is outside of our control. It's an act of God. And suddenly you're out of luck. So we look at that ecologically to say, what are the knockoff effects of all the bad acts we've done with extracts from fossil fuels and poor management of land and poor management of water and forgetting about externalities? What are those, and how can we look at them systemically so we can respond to them at the scale that they provide? And so we do a lot of work in forest health and forest management. We do work with sort of looking at how people look at the ocean and how we can help people connect to ocean health in different ways. So we work with very high technology, immersive AI, 3-dimensional space, complex data visualizations. And I work with low technology, with native tribes on fire that look at traditional tribal language and how does historical understandings of how you treat landscape actually improve the land around it, and how can we learn from the ways other people have done and bring those into our own contemporary behavior. So I work at those sort of 2 scales. That's what the center does. We work at those 2 scales.
All right. Well, that's wonderful. So once again, how can people reach out to you and learn more about what you do?
Again, the best way to reach out to us is leafisland.org. That's 2 words, leafislandtogether.org. And if you're interested in the Center for the Study of the Force Majeure, that's a little more complicated. But if you look up force majeure and environment, you'll find us, or perhaps in the notes of this podcast,
Right.
you can put a link to that. And otherwise, we'd be happy to speak to anyone who's interested in green infrastructure. And also, if you're interested in some of the things we do at the center, we're busy working. I have a team of very exceptional young people from San Jose State University reworking our website as we speak, and they're putting in an advanced mailing list option so that if you sign up, we'll actually be able to do something, get back and talk to you. So that's a real advance for a small nonprofit. So very happy about that.
All right, Joshua. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to us about this. I think it's an extremely interesting and important topic. And it's fascinating to me, the idea of having gardens up on the rooftop where you can go and sit on a park bench and relax, and at the same time it's doing some good for the environment. That's just awesome.
Yeah, you're connecting to the real power of the outdoors. We've stripped it away from our lives. But you just described why people like, the benefits of being connected to nature. And I'll leave you with this phrase that I often end my talks with. A society grows great when old people plant trees in whose shade they know they will never sit.
That's really important. All right. Thank you, Joshua. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, guys. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And you can check out upcoming shows, guests, and topics at podcast.leantotheleft.net. Subscribe to our audio version there and to our video shows here at YouTube. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gatty and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now, it's two. Bob Gatty is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left, LinkedIn at Bob Gatty, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gatty signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.